it chapter by chapter, one bite at a time. So many adventures and mountains we can climb. Take it word for word, line by line, one bite at a time.
Welcome to Bite at a Time Books, where we read you your favorite classics one bite at a time. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read, and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. If you want to know what's coming next and vote on upcoming books, sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. You'll also find our new t-shirts in the shop, including podcast shirts and quote shirts from your favorite classic novels. Be sure to follow my show on your favorite podcast platform so you get all the new episodes. You can find most of our links in the show notes, but also our website, biteatatimebooks.com, includes all of the links for our show, including to our Patreon to support the show, and YouTube, where we have special behind the narration of the episodes. We're part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you'd also like to hear what inspired your favorite classic authors to write their novels, and what was going on in the world at the time, check out the Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Please note, while we try to keep the text as close to the original as possible, some words have been changed to honor the marginalized communities who've identified the words as harmful, and to stay in alignment with Bite at a Time Books' brand values. Today we'll be continuing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Chapter 3. The Lark. It is not, all in all, sufficient to be wicked in order to prosper. The cook shop was in a bad way. Thanks to the traveler's 57 francs, Thénardier had been able to avoid a protest and honor his signature. On the following month, they were again in need of money. The woman took Cosette's outfit to Paris and pawned it at the pawnbroker's for 60 francs. As soon as that sum was spent, the Thénardiers grew accustomed to look on the little girl merely as a child whom they were caring for out of charity, and they treated her accordingly. As she had no longer any clothes, they dressed her in the cast-off petticoats and chemises of the Thénardier brats. That is to say, in rags. They fed her on what all the rest had left, a little better than the dog, a little worse than the cat. Moreover, the cat and the dog were her habitual table companions. Cosette ate with them under the table from a wooden bowl similar to theirs. The mother, who had established herself, as we shall see later on, at M/M, wrote, or more correctly, caused to be written, a letter every month, that she might have news of her child. The Thénardiers replied invariably, "Cosette is doing wonderfully well." At the expiration of the first 6 months, the mother sent 7 francs for the 7th month, and continued her remittances with tolerable regularity from month to month. The year was not completed when Thénardier said, "A fine favor she is doing us, in sooth. What does she expect us to do with her 7 francs? And he wrote to demand 12 francs. The mother, whom they had persuaded into the belief that her child was happy, and was coming on well, submitted and forwarded the 12 francs. Certain natures cannot love on the one hand without hating on the other. Mother Thénardier loved her 2 daughters passionately, which caused her to hate the stranger. It is sad to think that the love of a mother can possess villainous aspects. Little as was the space occupied by Cosette, it seemed to her as though it were taken from her own, and that little child diminished the air which her daughters breathed. This woman, like many women of her sort, had a load of caresses and a burden of blows and injuries to dispense each day. If she had not had Cosette, it is certain that her daughters, idolized as they were, would have received the whole of it. But the stranger did them the service to divert the blows to herself. Her daughters received nothing but caresses. Cosette could not make a motion which did not draw down upon her head a heavy shower of violent blows and unmerited chastisement. The sweet, feeble being, who should not have understood anything of this world or of God, incessantly punished, scolded, ill-used, beaten, and seeing beside her two little creatures like herself, who lived in a ray of dawn. Madame Thénardier was vicious with Cosette. Éponine and Azelma were vicious. Children at that age are only copies of their mother. The size is smaller, that is all. A year passed, then another. People in the village said, "Those Thénardiers are good people. They are not rich, and yet they are bringing up a poor child who is abandoned on their hands." They thought that Cosette's mother had forgotten her. In the meanwhile, Thénardier, having learned, it is impossible to say, by what obscure means, that the child was probably a bastard, and that the mother could not acknowledge it, exacted 15 francs a month, saying that the creature was growing and eating, and threatening to send her away. "Let her not bother me," he exclaimed, "or I'll fire her brat right into the middle of her secrets. I must have an increase." The mother paid the 15 francs. From year to year the child grew, and so did her wretchedness. As long as Cosette was little, she was the scapegoat of the two other children. As soon as she began to develop a little, that is to say, before she was even 5 years old, she became the servant of the household. 5 years old. The reader will say that it's not probable. Alas, it is true. Social suffering begins at all ages. Have we not recently seen the trial of a man named Dumollard, an orphan turned bandit, who from the age of 5, as the official documents state, being alone in the world, worked for his living and stole? Cosette was made to run on errands, to sweep the rooms, the courtyard, the street, to wash the dishes, to even carry burdens. The Thénardiers considered themselves all the more authorized to behave in this manner, since the mother, who was still at M/M, had become irregular in her payments. Some months she was in arrears. If this mother had returned to Montfermeil at the end of these 3 years, she would not have recognized her child. Cosette, so pretty and rosy on her arrival in that house, was now thin and pale. She had an indescribably uneasy look. A sly creature, said the Thénardiers. Injustice had made her peevish, and misery had made her ugly. Nothing remained to her except her beautiful eyes, which inspired pain. Because large as they were, it seemed as though one beheld in them a still larger amount of sadness. It was a heartbreaking thing to see this poor child, not yet 6 years old, shivering in the winter in her old rags of linen, full of holes, sweeping the street before daylight with an enormous broom in her tiny red hands, and a tear in her great eyes. She was called the Lark in the neighborhood. The populace, who were fond of these figures of speech, had taken a fancy to bestow this name on this trembling, frightened, and shivering little creature, no bigger than a bird, who was awake every morning before anyone else in the house, or the village, and was always in the street or the fields before daybreak. Only the little lark never sang. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books today, while we read a bite of one of your favorite classics. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, and I hope you come back tomorrow for the next bite of Les Miserables. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com and check out the shop. You can check out the show notes or our website, biteatatimebooks.com, for the rest of the links for our show. We'd love to hear from you on social media as well.